And now, a native podcast with Matt and Zach.
And welcome back to another episode of A Native Podcast. I am Zach, and with me, as always, is Matt. And I got to start it off that way, as always, and say, Matt, buddy, how we doing today?
Doing quite well, my man. Yeah, just enjoying a long weekend coming up and going to Peru in another week.
There you go, man. You excited for that?
I'm very ready, very
Yeah,
ready and excited a little bit too. So
good. We'll have to hear about what you have to say when you get back. Kind of give the guests a little bit of fun. Hey, Matt did this. He saw this. He saw a gorilla. No, they don't have gorilla. I don't know what you're going to see. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today, we're going to interview Calli Nicholson from Billings School District 2. She works with the Indian Education for All, definitely a really good, important program that the state of Montana has that requires that Native education is taught to students in the state of Montana. So we're going to learn a little bit about that today. We're going to share that with you. She talks about her role and kind of some fun things they do and the educational tools they have to do that. Do you have a fun fact though before we get started?
yeah, I had a related one today. It was I'll read it off here. That native in the state of Montana, Native American students are the largest racial ethnic minority group in the public schools, with approximately 10% of the total student population in K through 12 schools in the state. And I want to say that's pretty close to what the state percentage as a total of people is, right? It hovers around 10 or
I
so,
would
maybe more, obviously
I
more.
would argue, I mean, I think on paper it comes out to like 8% when you look at like the data. But that's,
Uh,
I mean, again, that's another thing. How many of those, like we talked with Callie today, how many of the two or more races aren't counted? How many of the people who are native, are indigenous, aren't counting themselves, one, because they don't know how to, or they don't want to, or there
yeah,
is those government issues.
yeah.
So I think 10% when you look at the public schools, that's a good number because that is that generation. You know what I mean? That is
Mm,
your population in a sense.
right.
No, yeah, it's good. It's really good to see that statistic.
And but that to me, the large Indian country population states they're around the like 5% up like category. Is like those are the big your Montana, Dakotas, Arizona, New Mexico, Oklahoma, right? It's Alaska, those kind of places, right? Um, yeah.
It's really, yeah, no, it's really good, and you hit those states on the head, like New Mexico, Oklahoma, those two definitely need programs like this. Washington, Oregon. I'm surprised Oregon doesn't.
Oregon's interesting because I'll let you know data wise, it went from 1% Native American to 2% very
Oh,
quickly. And Washington, I think, is around 3 now.
nice.
So, it's definitely, and I think it's Native people from other states like California coming here personally because of cost of living. But
Oh yeah, and
yeah,
then being pushed out. I mean, Montana, we're seeing it here in Montana. You're seeing it in Wyoming as well.
yeah,
It is cost of living. People moved, and then just jobs where jobs available.
mhm,
Like you said, the native centers in these urban areas.
that's a big one,
Yeah, I can live in Portland and there's Anaya. They have
right?
people who I can talk to or that have resources for me. So
Hmm.
no, I think that's definitely that great, and that's where these exist in these places. And you and I have talked about Billings and the history Billings has had with natives, both positive and negative, as a crossroads, and kind of how it is, and just me living there, seeing it, seeing the racism, but also seeing the culture and the pride,
Right.
because like I do have neighbors that are Crow, I do have neighbors that are Northern Cheyenne in that sense. Like it wasn't like, up here in Sealy, like where are the natives? You know what I mean? I see a teepee
Right.
over there at their commerce center or whatever, the when you come into town. So
Wow.
no, I mean, it's good. It's good to have that. I'm excited for this interview. Callie was a wonderful guest to have, and she's doing great stuff in Indian country, and we need to take note of that. So, without further ado, here's Callie.
Did you know there's a new native apparel company?
No, I did not.
It's called Shop LS 574, named after the 574 federal tribes and the Little Shell descendancy of its founders.
Wow, that's really cool, man.
It is. It is becoming a spot to order native apparel by and for natives, working with native designers and teams to help best represent Indian country.
That's awesome, dude.
For sure. Now make sure to go pick up some Native podcast swag as well as other native gear while shopping at shopls574.com.
Oh, yeah. And do not forget to use code ANP10 to save on your next order.
That's ANP10. Hey Matt, did you know there's a tribally owned net company?
No, I did not.
Not only are they tribally owned, but Blue Ribbon Nets also creates totally sustainable products. With Blue Ribbon Nets, not only are you getting quality nets, but even eco-friendly ones as well.
That's awesome, dude.
It sure is indeed. Make sure to use code RUGAROO10 on your next Blue Ribbon Net order to save. Again, the code is RUGAROO10, RUGARU10.
I am definitely getting a Blue Ribbon Net now.
Tune in every Tuesday to hear your favorite native podcast.
That's right. A Native Podcast has new episodes every week, ranging from boarding schools to Indian child welfare.
Not only that, but we have Indian country covered from Maine to California and Florida to Alaska, Hopi to Blackfeet and Choctaw to Tlingit, and all those Crees in between.
And all you other natives and non-natives out there, we want to remind you to tune in this Tuesday to A Native Podcast.
Well, and welcome back, everybody. We'd like to introduce you to today's guest, Calli Nicholson. She works with the Billings Public Schools, and I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do with the Billings Public Schools.
Sure. Well, hello, and thank you for inviting me to be on this podcast. It's really exciting. I've never been on a podcast. So my name's
Nice.
Calli Nicholson. My email's really long, so I go by Calli Rusche-Nicholson as well. I work with the Billings Public Schools. I'm the Director of Indigenous Education, and I've been with the Billings Schools for a long time, quite a few years. I've been a teacher, instructional coach, and now I'm in our Indigenous Education department.
Nice. So what are some of those, I guess, things that you do with the schools? Because the Billings Public Schools is school district 2, correct? And you serve a large, diverse group of people. I mean, I grew up in Billings, so I'm very familiar with, like, you have your West End West kids, and then you have, the Lockwood kids, which very different, diverse backgrounds, both, financially as well as culturally
Sure.
as well.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, with my years since first starting teaching in the school district, I started in 2006. There's
Cool.
been some similarities, but there's also been some differences. So gone are the days where our Indigenous students are in some schools, but not all. There was a time when some of our more affluent schools might have 1 or 2 Indigenous students, and now we have students at every single school. So one of our big tasks is reaching out to ensure that we provide students with at least cultural enrichment at every school. So our department works with 3 big funding groups. 2 are state funded and 1 is a federal fund. And every once in a while we'll get some grants that help supplement as well. But these kind of are our main source of where we work, what guides our work. So the first one that I refer to is our Indian Education for All, because that's for all, that's everybody. That's a state fund. That was first funded in 2006. And as you know, that's unique to Montana, that Indian Education for All was written into our Constitution, but the funding first came about in 2006, which was when I first started teaching. So I always think that's kind of a cool little tie-in. But with that provides.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it's really exciting. And
I didn't
so
know it was 2006 because I had a teacher in 2007 because I was 7 in the 7th grade who was like, now I have to teach this to you. And it was very much so a white
like
woman saying, I have to talk
task,
about
yes.
natives.
Yes. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
that was when like the true hook came in. Like now there's funding behind it. And gosh, I hope I'm not getting any of my years incorrect, but I'm pretty sure on that one because like I said, my first year teaching and I had opportunity to help with some of the lesson plans and things like that. So Indian
okay.
Education for All, we call it IFA. I have some people call it IEFA. Whatever you want to call it, just know you're learning about the unique cultural heritages of our indigenous peoples. We focus a lot on Montana because we're in Montana. And so one part of our department is we are training all of our teachers to hopefully have some lessons within their classroom and getting out to students as well, teaching about just tribal groups. And our big task right now is our coaches, so our instructional coaches that focus on training teachers on IFA. They're working on a scope and sequence because back since 2006, we would have all sorts of sprinkling of lessons, but you might learn about tribal groups in this grade, and then this grade, and this grade, and this grade, and you know, and hear the same thing, and then not have some of the other essential understandings. And so what we're working on is knowing what kindergarten you're going to learn in kindergarten, what you're going to learn in fifth grade, what you're going to learn in, you know, ninth grade ELA, so that that way we have that nice span to ensure that it's one, there's an opportunity in every classroom, but two, there's not a hard overlap, or if there is, it's a nice correlation. So we can say, oh, it builds on itself, you know, those types of things. And some lessons like teepees, for example, we can really teach about that almost every grade level and teach something kind of different and reinforce. Like those are some of our favorites. And bison, that's another one too, that you could really just bring into almost every grade level. So that's our first solid tier of funding. Our next one is another
Oh,
state
cool.
funding. Yeah, did you have any questions about that one at all, or keep going?
I know Matt did. He really was curious because he grew up in Oregon and he was impressed by the Indian education for all.
Yeah, you know what, here we didn't have any sort of thing similar to the Indian Education for All. Like my first was at Oregon State, really was the Native Americans in Oregon course in
Oh
ethics.
yeah.
So it's kind of like you know, growing up in Southern Oregon. We did have a Native Studies course that was offered after I graduated through Southern Oregon University for like college credit. But my brother was lucky to be able to do that, not me. But they didn't have like a statewide level, you know,
Yes.
yeah, plan like that. So
Yep, some of our Montana superheroes made that happen. I mean, actually we have a lesson about how it first came into our Constitution, but then even with the funding, and you know, you get to some of those superheroes like Denise Juneau, Carol Juneau, Stan Juneau, and then you know, Mike Jetty, Everell Fox, some of those folks that just like made sure it was out there. And ever since then, we've just been layering on good initiative after positive initiative, and I could tell you a whole bunch of our IFA superheroes that have made sure it keeps going. And, you know, granted, you'll get into like some different schools and classrooms where it might not be happening yet, but I try to look at it from the positive angle that it's more of a concerned about teaching something wrong more than at this point in time, you know, like might have been when we first had the IFA initiative to be like, oh no, I'm not doing that. Now it's kind of like, oh, what if I do something wrong, teach something wrong? I just had a teacher say that the other day. Can you give me some prompts on how to answer this if the student asks this so I know that I'm not saying something wrong? It's like, really, if you're trying from, you know, the bottom of your heart to do what's best and teach about our indigenous peoples to our students, teach that multiple perspective, you're doing the right thing. So keep going, keep asking questions, you're on the right track. But yeah, Montana, there's a lot of things that we might not be ahead of the game on with education, but this is one we're like, I've always felt like we're leading the path. So it's really exciting. But yeah, any other IFA questions? Should I move on to our next one?
I had a question more related to your student population there with the native
Sure.
student. I'm assuming a large majority or more Crow Cheyenne as
Yes.
opposed to because of you know how close you guys are and whose land you're on. So
Yes. So
yeah.
our next level of funding, we have actually two that support our Indigenous students specifically. And so the first one is a state funding. It's called our American Indian Achievement Gap funding. And that is for anybody who identifies as Indigenous. So on your demographics, when you go to enroll your child in a Billings Public Schools or any school in Montana, you click American Indian, they boom, automatically get this Achievement Gap money. And so that one is unique. And then our other one is a federal guidelines for funding. That's called Title VI. And that one requires documentation. So if when we get those questions like how many students do you have that might be Crow or Northern Cheyenne? And we kind of have to be more general. But that form is what's required for the federal funding. And that's where you get into like the blood quantum and the membership whole thing, because it has to be either a child excuse me, the student, the parent, or the grandparent that is a member of a federally recognized tribal group. So with that federal guidelines of Title VI, we cannot count students that are of a tribal membership from Canada, but we can with our achievement gap money because it's self-identification. And then on that one, they ask for some sort of either documentation or membership number. But the thing of it is that kind of gets me is you list the one tribe. So like in the case of my children, they would list which tribe they're enrolled in. They didn't list, Fort Belknap, Grovant, but they wouldn't list all the other tribes that they are. So we can say like we have, of course, the highest population of our students are going to be Apsalika, Crow, but we can't say we have, like exactly digging down to how many different tribes might be represented because we only have that one listed. We're digging through, we've had kind of a data rollover since I started this position, but at one point in time, we've had as many as 90 tribes represented in our school districts. In our school district, excuse me, but we have the highest population of Indigenous students of any district in Montana. Documenting that with the federal forms, we're a hair behind, I think it's Browning, but we have close to, we have over 2,000 students, and that number is actually a little bit higher in the Billings Public Schools that are identified as Indigenous. And what's really unique about Montana, when you look at the reporting form. So if you remember when I was talking about the achievement gap money from the state, how you just click American Indian and you automatically are identified. And that's so important. For some reason, we'll get families that won't check that box. And it could be like out of a fear of, having some sort of, like, I guess, kind of view upon their family. It could be just trying to step away from wherever, history might be. And then also might be a lack of awareness. But when you check that, that provides some different funding. And it's also important because when we look at our graduation rates in Montana, that will say how many of our students are on track to or are graduating with their original freshman cohort, how many have dropped out, how many are reading at grade level, all of that data that's really important. If you went outside of Montana and we're looking at federal guidelines, like in my case, if I was to check American Indian and white, I would automatically be pulled out of that category and placed into multiple races. So that's where Montana is unique. As soon as you check American Indian, you're in that category for all of that data, which I think is important because then we can see how we're doing educationally. And then, as a community, as a family, how are you doing raising our children? But those are our three big tiers of funding on how we serve Billings Public Schools. One is all students educating, and the other two are serving our Indigenous population specifically.
Wow, no, that's really good to know. Definitely we've come into similar issues with the U.S. Census because the census number, the same thing with the two or more races. So like IHS talk about underfunding, IHS will use the American Indian alone number. So
Yep.
even though I'm enrolled, I'm following the two or more race category, I still use IHS. I still get those, I'm still an issue, and that's why they're underfunded. They're not getting that data, and there's so many more tribes, and there's so many more multi-tribal kids, especially in these urban areas. You take a thing like Billings or Portland, these native centers, and the people, it's like, I'm Blackfeet, but my wife's now, Cheyenne or something else. And you have these kids that are 4 or 5 different tribes, and they look native, but some can't even be enrolled sometimes because they don't have enough of one of those tribes. So it's good to see that there's multiple, like you said, there's the different funding, so there's all kids, all Indigenous are encompassed under that.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
Now is
Yeah.
that, I'm assuming, so it's American Indian, Alaska Natives as well, correct?
Yes.
And then is Native Hawaiians included, or there's probably not many there, but
They,
Really?
I haven't researched it, but they actually have their own federal grant.
Okay.
But with our achievement gap money, we reach a lot of students that way. So we
Yeah.
tend to open the door with whether it be our cultural enrichment opportunities at the high school level, the clubs, and then our family engagement activities. We open the door. So we're not gonna be like, show me an enrollment card before you come in here, that type of thing. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, come on in. We love to have as many people learn and be involved as possible.
And what are some of those learning opportunities and events that you guys do and those kind of
Sure. So
cultural activities that happen?
yes. So both with our achievement gap money and our Title VI money, we have two major goals that we work towards. One is we have a staff of a staff of about 10 people, and they work towards a big one is mentoring. One of the things that the more I research is how critical it is to have mentoring in place in a school district. And there's different levels of mentoring. You could be from having a peer-to-peer, just making sure everybody's got a buddy, right? Then it could be volunteers coming in to mentor. And then in our level of mentoring is probably the most intensive. And that's meeting with students. We have a specific caseload, meet with them once a week, and they have student goals they're working on. And so they might say, I'm, working on this attendance goal. And then they work on different strategies to help the student. But our next big one is the cultural enrichment. And that one is one we focus heavily on because we said, you can learn, we have some of the best teachers in the state of Montana here in Billings schools. And so with that, I totally trust they're teaching our kids to read. I totally trust they're teaching them basic math facts, but the cultural enrichment, that's our job. We need to share with them about just the different enrichment options from our tribes in Montana, and then hopefully they can go out and learn more about their own tribe if they're not local. And so what we do is we start as early as, and I want to say kindergarten, but first grade, we go out into the classrooms in every school and do a presentation that helps enhance what they've been learning in the classroom with their EFA lessons. So for example, we're getting ready, our first ones will be going out to fourth grade. We have little tiny teepees. They're about 8-foot teepees or 9-foot teepees. And the fourth graders help us put up the teepee and take the teepee down. Then we load it up and go to the next school. And we talk about, tribal differences, how structurally it's such an amazing, how it's built, the cone shape and you can kind of get into the science behind the wind. Later on, when they get into 8th grade, they'll talk about the thermodynamics behind heating of the teepee and how it's just really an amazing structure that's so, it was built in a way to be mobile, everything you guys know already, but just all the different Indigenous ways of knowing behind it. And then we also set up teepees at the middle schools and high schools to be up throughout the year. And that one's a big one to just have that symbol of belonging so that students know when you walk into this school, when you walk into West High, you belong here. Because, you're on Indigenous land. So making sure that everybody has that protective factor of knowing this is their school. And then after we do the teepees, we start to get into some other presentations. It could be on Indigenous veterans, we do tribal names. We have a really fun one. My favorite is we do some Indigenous sign language to show the students like how the different languages would communicate. And I've had the question come up like, well, how does that fit with present day life? Well, that's big because when we think about everything we're doing with, social media and AI, one of the things that gets lost is the multiple perspectives, right? And how do you communicate with somebody when you don't have all the, the Google Voice to translate right there for you or Google Translate? And so talking about this was a way to communicate, with your hands, with your facial expression in a way so we all know, hey, there's a rattlesnake up the path. Stay away from that way. And you know what I mean? So that one's one of my favorite. Some of the other presentations we might do is taking students on field trips, and we send some of our staff to be there to help point out some different important information. And then, I guess I have a couple favorites. The other one that is so cool is one of our staff members, Clint Valandra, had the idea of taking high school students to the elementary and having them present on powwows. And so this will be our third year. What we do is we have them get on a big fancy bus and we go to all the elementary schools. So each of the high schools, of the three main high schools, will take 2 days and go visit all their feeder elementary schools, and they lead the presentation. And so by the end of day 2, they've got it down to a science where they talk about their regalia, talk about their dance style, why they dance, their tribal affiliation, and then they answer questions from the students. And our goal is that the adults stop talking, unless of course they have a question, but stop talking and let the students talk. And that one is pretty amazing. And so 2 things. One is the students get to see, elementary students get to see high school students, showing their culture. They're in high school, they're successful academically. And then the high school students get leadership skills that they might not always have the opportunity unless they're already in, some big activities club that does that. So that's one that is pretty fun too. And then family-wise, we're always exploring different avenues to get our families involved, but we really spend most of our energy in the classroom. And then we have our annual youth powwow that the students help run, our Billings Student Tribal Council. And then we always kind of rotate what we're doing for family events. We've had language nights. We have a media night where during the summer, high school students help film a documentary. And then we do a media night where we get to watch the documentary and have a big showcase of it. I'll have to invite you both when it comes time to do that. It's a really cool documentary that they get to build. And the first year it started with a long hair video that our department made, and we interviewed, and it was actually part 2, but we interviewed some of our boys in our district that had long hair and why that's important, and the strength behind it. And we use that if that ever comes up, like, so-and-so has questions why little Johnny has long hair, or, he's feeling bad and he needs some support, and we'll bring that video in, and it just kind of transforms the whole classroom when they can say, oh, wow, look at those big kids, they have long hair, and that's why they have long hair. And then last year we had our second media night was the documentary, dinner and a documentary was the students made a documentary focusing on urban knowledge keepers, and they interviewed them and made that documentary, and we interviewed and then this year the documentary is focusing on our Indigenous youth in the urban community, and we tried to really focus on that leadership and what it means to be Indigenous youth leader and how you can get involved with your school. So that one's pretty fun too. I guess I have a lot of favorites.
Yeah. No, that sounds like a lot of fun. It's good that that's available for our students. I mean, you don't have that in like other places, and it's good to see, like you said, Montana's leading the way, and that, I look at states like Oklahoma, New Mexico, Washington with high populations of Native students, and it's like, they can do this. We can make it happen. And even throughout Montana, I know Billings Public Schools is kind of the premier too to go for this Native studies as well. Um, have you always, I guess, worked in the schools throughout your career? And did you work with your tribe prior to getting into the schools? Or how did that lead you to where you're at today? How did you become, like, specifically in this role or the tribal role? Want to join that role?
Well, not to date myself to be too old,
No,
but
you're
I didn't have, even though, growing up, I grew up in Wolf Point and growing up on the res, I think, teachers are trying, but I didn't see Indian education for all in the classroom. So, just
right.
like a lot of people having to learn about your culture outside of that. And I think I can see that with a lot of my peers kind of learning and growing now at our old age and kind of getting that opportunity to learn more about our culture. But that was something I was kind of craving when I went to college. So I left to go, first I went to Miles Community College, and then I rodeoed for 2 years there. And then I went to Rocky Mountain College on a scholarship. And I was kind of searching, and, I joined our Indian club at the college there. Um, but you know, it's just like your culture follows with you, and it's really like molded by the time period that you're living. And I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I'm actually a third generation teacher. My mom and my grandma were both teachers. My grandma taught at a little tiny country school south of Wolf Point. But knowing that, I went into the classroom, and like I said, that was when Indian Education for All was first funded. And with my mom being a teacher, there was some opportunities for us both to go to OPI and Helena and start developing some lesson plans together. And that was so fun because it was like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And then, you know, it sparks this whole big personal research, like, oh my gosh, I didn't learn this piece and this piece and this piece. And at that time too, I met my husband, and he was, you know, involved with the Sundance and a lot with his culture. And so we had an opportunity to really dig into that together and learn and grow as adults. But in my professional career, I taught primarily fourth grade, fifth grade. And then not long after that, Mandy Smoker Broadus, who was with OPI at the time, reached out to me, and I went to work for the Schools of Promise, which was a grant that was a school improvement grant that was granted to Montana for the lowest performing schools, which was our reservation schools, unfortunately, at
Right.
that time. And you know, there's still some of that data. And so I went to work at Prior Public, or supporting Prior Public and supporting Lame Deer and Fraser. And so I had opportunity to go back to my tribe at that time to work in Fraser and, you know, be reconnected. But after that, I went back to Billings Public Schools after the grant ran out and went back into the classroom. From there, I transitioned to working as an instructional coach. And that's an amazing opportunity. You're teaching teachers, but you're learning as you go. And so there were so many things I'd learned about how teaching reading and writing that I hadn't known as a teacher. So I did that for a few years, and I learned so much about it. About that time is about when we started the science of reading, and just understanding how that pathway for a child to learn to read is similar for everybody, but what's different is just the barriers. So, for example, dyslexia, then it kind of changes how you learn to read. And I think that's so important and something to bring back to all of our students, because knowing, you know, all of us have that pathway, it might be just a little bit different barriers to kind of move around. And then not long after, this position came available, and this was something I had been striving towards. And all along this path, I had been doing work with Indian Education for All, developing lesson plans, trying to recruit lead teachers to help us make lesson plans. And then, like I said, when this position became open, I had opportunity to step in to this director role.
That's really cool. That's really nice to hear. It's good to have people like you who want to be in these positions and are there for quite a while too. That's good that like it's not somebody you get, like you said, like some of these tribal communities. Part of the problem is like you get that teachers at there for 3 months and then they're like, I don't want to live in a Wolf Point. I don't want to live in Poplar. You know,
Yeah,
it happens and
yeah,
it's sad to see. I'm actually living in Wolf Point right now too, so I'm not there at the moment, but I do live
yeah.
there. It's
Yeah,
I get
I
it.
see trees behind you. That
Yeah,
makes
yeah.
it cool. So
Yes, I'm on the other side of the state, but no, it's good, and I'm glad that we have people there in Indian country that care about our students because that's part of it. Not a lot of people are educated on the topic and understand, and they're trying to take that away, which is scary. And I hope you guys aren't feeling any of that with the state, and I hope the state stays with it because it is one of those things that this education, there we were the original peoples here. There are
Yes.
there is a history that was here prior to European manifestation. Like it
Yeah.
happened, but we got to talk about it. It's how you learn from it. It's how you get better. Um, I guess kind of before we got a little bit of time left. Do you have any advice for any young Native people wanting to work in tribal education or get involved in their tribal communities and what they can do?
Sure. Well, and I got something you kept saying too, living in Indian country. I loved how you said that, because a lot of times we think of our urban community we don't think of it as Indian country as, you know, our indigenous populations, but it's huge.
Yes.
And that is something we try to really push to our students, no matter where you're at. If you know, if you're in North America, you're on indigenous land, and that's where you belong. So if you have a path that's leading you wherever it might be, that's okay. Learn and grow. If it brings you back home, if it brings you to another home, that's where you need to be. And we have so many students that you know, they're born and raised in urban community. My own children are born and raised in an urban community. So, you know, like to tell someone, hey, you know, when you go back home, like, well, this is home, you know, like, yeah, that's home too, but you know, this is where I belong. And so we really want to encourage that. So anybody looking to go into education first, as I'm really grateful and want to encourage you, because our educational system right now is hurting. I am so fortunate because of our school district is our leadership, our current superintendent very much advocates for Indian education for all, and I feel like our state's still there too. I don't feel like there's any tightening on that end. I feel like we have support, which is something I'm very grateful for. So for any young people, young adults looking to go into education, keep going. We really need you at this point in time. Again, no matter where you end up, take your culture with you. So if it's some small town, 100, 200 miles away from the reservation, keep teaching Indian education for all. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. We're here to help you no matter where you're at. For those of you not quite on that path towards the educational degree, maybe just looking, keep going. Sometimes it feels like you're jumping through hoops, but that's just something, sometimes you got to do that. Just learn how to jump through hoops, learn how to have difficult conversations, practice, and stay on that path as much as you can. And don't be afraid to ask questions. That's something we run into a lot with both students and families, is thinking you heard one answer, but keep asking. If it doesn't sound like the right answer, whether it's dealing with a teacher, dealing with your child's teacher, dealing with a supervisor, just keep asking in a respectful way until you truly understand the answer, because sometimes it's truly just a big miscommunication. I feel like in our big world of cell phones and social media, we struggle to really communicate with each other. And that's something to really work on, is just try to have someone explain to you in a way you understand. Feels like
Oh,
kind
I
of
really
broad,
like.
messy
No, I
advice.
like that. I know, I totally, and I like, you know, when when we're talking about Indian country and these urban centers, because I look at, I was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico. That was a crossroads for all those Pueblo people. Today, it still is. You have the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center. You have all these different Native organizations down there. And then you come up to Billings. Billings, same thing. It was a crossroads. You had
Yeah.
all these tribes that used the Yellowstone, the Crow. I would argue the Little Shell, the, you know, Assiniboine,
Yep.
the Sioux. Everyone were in that area.
Yep.
I'm sure people camped there. Like, you got to take like these, there's 80-year-old people who are in these tribes and in these villages, right? I'm sure there were teepees 365 days a year in the Billings Valley or in that area where Billings is, right?
Yep.
These areas, these urban centers, these trade posts, Mandan, have existed for thousands of years, hundreds of years, you know, like we are, like, as Indian people, we've always been connected to, like you said, like this land. This is ours. We know it, we understand it, we've lived it. And there is that connection to it. Matt, is there anything you have?
Yeah, no, I'm out here in Salem, Oregon, and I grew up in Oregon for the majority of my life. But being Oglala Lakota, it's like every time I go the east direction, I feel a little better. I was just out in Montana with Zach for the Little Shell powwow this last weekend,
Ah,
so
oh,
um,
good.
that went really well, and the Little Shell are doing quite a bit right now. So
Yeah,
um,
Nina Daya. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
my colleague, well, I guess not colleague, but somebody I connect with often is Dugan Colburn over there at Great Falls, and yeah, he's doing a lot of great things. Missoula's doing a lot of great things too. So yeah, I know, I love that too, what you're saying, because that's a very, I guess, European mindset to think of boundaries how they are. And
Mhm.
when you look at like we research that or use that map often that outlines the Treaty of Fort Laramie, but we try to explain like there's boundaries here, but there really wasn't boundaries. That's just the time period we're growing up now, where we think of, oh, this line, but that wasn't the case. It was very much moving, and it's hard to imagine.
It's the same.
No, it was
Yeah.
exactly. We're sitting in this valley. Those buffalo are over there. Oh, look, there's those guys from Coville. How do we know they're from Coville? Well, look, they got the fish stuff. They're fish guys,
Yeah.
but they want to hunt a buffalo. Like we want the meat. Okay, and that's the thing. We're not hunting like you think of like farming and all that. Like that's capitalism. That's how many cows can we get? How many can we get out? Versus like we're just going to take that one buffalo, eat on him for 2, 3, 4 weeks because they're huge, and then go from there. Like, oh, we'll go catch some fish in the fall or do something different. Like it's a different mindset. But I do.
I had one.
Oh,
I had
go
one
ahead,
thing.
Matt. Go ahead.
Real quick, I gotta say this. So you mentioned the Indian Sign Language, and I have to say this. Anyone that's a naysayer for that, travel to another country where you don't speak the language well, and you'll see how you'll start using hand signs.
Yes.
I'm going to Peru in a little over a week to the Amazon, and my Spanish is I can do basic conversation, but you're going to be using some hand signs, and it just popped into my head when you were talking about it. So,
Yes. Well, and I'm so impressed that you got a little bit of Spanish. That's what you said, right? I
well,
don't.
growing up in Oregon, you pick up Spanish.
Oh,
There's a
I
lot of Spanish speakers here.
struggle so bad with languages. I'm trying to learn Nakona online. But I found that helps a little bit. Like the hand talk helps with, when you're learning the language too. Because I'm just a poor student, but lifelong learner, right? So I'm not going to give up, but I've got a lot to learn. Yeah.
Well, it's the Grove On story, correct? Is the big belly, right? Is
Yeah.
like they were saying we're the people of the waterfall, and the French mistook that as big belly.
Yeah. Well, yep. And we utilize the OPI, and so I hope that that's all tribally correct too. But that's one of the things we share, and I love to share that with students because we talk about, how important it is to communicate. And look, this is what happens. And, when there was mistranslation, and yeah, that's a fun one to teach for sure. Because they're like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, and they've been calling them wrong name all these years. Yeah, they have been calling wrong name.
Well, and that's where you see some tribes, not to get too far off, but like was it San Felipe? I think down in New Mexico, they went back to their like original
Oh,
name. So because they were like, well, we're not, these
Yeah.
saints, we're our own. So I'm interested to see if other tribes follow along that path because part of it's just like, whatever, like it works. Like that's what I am. You know I'm different. Like I don't know, there's bigger problems, I guess. But I do got to be that guy. We got to go into our final words. Do you have any final words on today's episode?
Oh, just thank you so much for the opportunity. This was fun. And I guess the last thing is I really want to stress I am a learner. I have a lot to learn, and I'm grateful for all the teachers out there that are teaching me and teaching our team and everybody else the best path to stay on. So we're grateful for that.
Sweet. Thank you. Matt?
yeah, Callie, thank you for being on. I learned a bit today, and it's always good to hear what's going on in different areas of Indian country. So thank you
Yeah.
for the work you do.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's always exciting to get into the education spectrum. I think that's with this podcast, something me and Matt were talking about is like we want to educate people about Indian country because not a lot of people know. A lot of the emails we get, we had one lady who emailed in not too long ago that she was reconnecting. She found out that her birth father was native. She was adopted out and
Yeah.
grew up white, she said, completely. And then she's reconnecting with him in her later half of life. And it's interesting that people have that understanding. They don't necessarily have an understanding of Indian country or what natives are. They have the history, and I put quotations of that because you do go like you grow up in a Virginia, they're not going to teach you the same way they do here in Montana or other places. So it's good that programs like this exist. We need other states to pick them up. Even if the federal government could pick it up, that would be, I think, really cool. But might take a little while for that. Until next time. Bye-bye.
I know chiefs, I know riders from the east. I know educated natives down to picket in the streets. Middle fingers to police. Fuck you, we come in peace. I know red skin hippies that be giving me the creeps. I know beauty, I know beach. I know savages and freaks. And I know a couple cousins even bougier than me. No, ain't elite. Bougie native, yes indeed. Art exhibit to the club. And we roll it 20 deep. Copper on my neck. Gold on my ring, feather on my hat, skin stitched chin. 100 warriors on my back, they be drumming when I sing. Man, there ain't no way around it.
A Native Podcast is produced by G&G Advertising and Quartz Lake Productions.